Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 11 2021 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, it was one of the worst weeks I have had as a prognosticator, making predictions on this channel throughout the season. One of the worst weeks I have ever had, especially on my Against the Spread picks. Ladies and gentlemen, I would first wholeheartedly like to apologize for my downright garbage, pathetic, lowest point of my Against the Spread picking over the last 3 or 4 seasons for my Against the Spread picks. For anybody that took my picks, I'm sorry I cost you a bunch of money, and if you're living in a van down by the river, I apologize. But last week Against the Spread, I had a 1-12 performance, one game right, which was the Seahawks-Packers game, ended up being a 17-0 shutout. Besides that, I lost every single game against the spread. I lost, the Bills overperformed. The Cowboys overperformed. The Falcons underperformed. The Titans and Saints, you had a 2.5 point spread. The Titans won by 2. You got a screwed cover there. The Vikings were able to close a football game. The Broncos underperformed. Kudos to everybody that picked the Broncos, especially the Boston Sports Report. Shout out to you. Congratulations for getting that game right. And the Vikings game right. Actually, I think I talked to you all 3 of your differences. Shout out to the Boston Sports Report. He is he makes great predictions every week himself. Check out his YouTube channel. I'll put it in the link in the description below. But that was bad. The Jags overperformed. The Bills overperformed. Just trying to remember all the games here. The Raiders-Chiefs game ended up being a massive blowout, and I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be a 50-50 game. So basically, all up and down my Against the Spread picks, it all went to garbage. The Lions-Steelers game ended up in a tie. And it was great that Najee Harris, who had been, in a dominant college program, he didn't even know you could tie in the NFL. Which is kind of hilarious because, since 2008 when I started watching, there have been at least 5 to 7 ties I've seen throughout the time. So it's like, eventually you've had to know that, a tie can happen. I think it's a bunch of bullcrap. I think that they should go to the college rules personally and go through a sense of where, you keep playing until somebody wins. That's just my own personal opinion. But that was just the craziness of the week. The Washington football team beating the Bucs by 10 when you had them as 9.5 point favorites. The Cardinals losing Kyler Murray, that wasn't a big, surprise throughout the week. But then the Panthers, with Cam Newton back, were able to get a dominant blowout win. So my Against the Spread picks just went to crap in a handbasket, and I apologize to anybody that tried to go off my picks. And I know that if I really genuinely put money on those picks, I would have been living in a van down by the river. My straight-up picks did better, but they ended up being 500 at 6-6, and 1. So I had my first tie of the season for that as well. So that equals 50%. So definitely the worst week I've had probably in several years doing these predictions. My Against the Spread pick. There is nothing but looking up from here for my Against the Spread picks. So I'll move forward with that. And my overall records now Against the Spread, I am 62, 84, and 3 against the spread, and straight up I am now 92, 56, and 1. And just a reminder for everybody, tonight I have the Los Angeles Rams minus 4.5 over the San Francisco 49ers on Monday Night Football in the Odell Beckham Jr. debut. And I think that signing is now ever more important due to the loss of wide receiver Robert Woods, who tore his ACL who had an isolated tear of the ACL in Friday's practice. He is out for the season. And I will mention this, I've heard that Odell Beckham Jr. may be playing some punt returns, so I think that'll be very interesting moving forward. So those two percentages, 62, 84, and 3 equals up to 42.6% against the spread, and straight up that equals 62.1%. So definitely a down year. There is no way I'm going to be able to get the 500 even throughout the rest of the games with my luck. Hopefully I can, pull some good weeks together, past the halfway point, but my goal is to have at least 2 or 3 consecutive winning or average weeks. That's my goal moving forward against the spread. And straight up, definitely 69, 70 is not going to be attainable, but can I get to 65, 67? I think I could with the remaining games this week, and especially with how everything's shaped up. I feel like it's a pretty easy week to pick straight up. The buys for this week, the Denver Broncos and Los Angeles Rams are on bye this week. So you have the Broncos defense, Melvin Gordon, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, Albert O, Teddy Bridgewater. The Rams defense, Matthew Stafford, Odell Beckham, Tony Michelle, Matt Gay, Brandon McManus. If you have any of those players on your fantasy teams, bench them because they will not be playing this week in a 15-game week this week. All right, so time for my picks for this week in Week 11. So on Thursday, when the 6-4 New England Patriots travel to Atlanta to take on the 4-5 Atlanta Falcons, the New England Patriots are 5.5-point favorites in this game, giving the New England Patriots here -5.5, and the New England Patriots straight up. Then on Sunday, when the 5-5 Indianapolis Colts travel to Buffalo to take on the 7-3 Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Bills are 7-point favorites in this game. Give me the Buffalo Bills here to win straight up, but I'm going to take the Indianapolis Colts +7. I'm sorry, 6-3 Buffalo Bills. When the 5-5 Indianapolis Colts travel to Buffalo to take on the 6-3 Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Bills are 7-point favorites. Give me the Indianapolis Colts here +7, but I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-3 Baltimore Ravens travel to Chicago to take on the 3-6 Chicago Bears, the Chicago Bears are 6-point underdogs in this game. Just like with the previous game, I'm going to take the Chicago Bears +6, but the Baltimore Ravens straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-1 Detroit Lions go to Cleveland, take on the 5-5 Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are 10-point favorites in this game, giving the Cleveland Browns here -10, and the Cleveland Browns straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-8 Houston Texans travel to Tennessee to take on the 8-2 Tennessee Titans, the Tennessee Titans are 10-point favorites in this game. Give me the Tennessee Titans here -10, and the Tennessee Titans straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-2 Green Bay Packers, the 8-2 Green Bay Packers travel to Minnesota to take on the 4-5 Minnesota Vikings. The Green Bay Packers are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Green Bay here -2.5, and Green Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-6 Miami Dolphins travel to New York to take on the 2-7 New York Jets. The Miami Dolphins are 3-point favorites in this game, giving the Miami Dolphins here -3, and the Miami Dolphins straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-4 New Orleans Saints travel to Philadelphia to take on the 4-6 Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are 1.5-point favorites in this game, giving the Philadelphia Eagles here -1.5, and the Philadelphia Eagles straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-6 Washington football team travels to Carolina to take on the 5-5 Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers are 3-point favorites in this game, giving the Carolina Panthers here -3. The Carolina Panthers straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-6 or 4-5 San Francisco 49ers travel to Jacksonville to take on the 2-7 Jacksonville Jaguars. The San Francisco 49ers are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the San Francisco 49ers here to win straight up, but I'm going to take Jacksonville +5.5. Then the next game, when the 5-4 Cincinnati Bengals travel to Las Vegas to take on the 5-4 Las Vegas Raiders. This game is a pick'em game on the line, so this is great. So I'm going to take Cincinnati here on the line in a pick'em against the spread and straight up. Then the next game, when the 7-2 Dallas Cowboys travel to Kansas City to take on the 6-4 Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are 2-point favorites in this game in my probably lone upset of the week. Both against the spread and straight up. I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys here +2 and the Dallas Cowboys straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-2 Arizona Cardinals travel to Seattle to take on the 3-6 Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks are 2-point favorites in this game. I am just going to say this. I will take Seattle regardless of what happens. I think it's going to, Kyler's injury status is going to obviously be a key. Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins' injury status is going to be key. Colt McCoy left the game yesterday with a chest injury, so they're going to go to Chris Streveler if Kyler Murray can't go, or depending on how Colt goes. But I'm going to take Seattle here -2 and Seattle straight up. But I definitely, and I'm going to stick with that, regardless of Kyler and DeAndre play. I understand that if Kyler goes and DeAndre goes, that I think the Cardinals would more than likely be the favorite. But I'm just going to stick with Seattle because I'm going to hope that they don't go. But we'll see. So that's why I have the Seattle Seahawks here -2 and Seattle Seahawks straight up. Then the next game, the Sunday night game, when the 5-3-1 Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Los Angeles to take on the 5-4 Los Angeles Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I am going to take the Los Angeles Chargers here to win straight up, but give me the Pittsburgh Steelers +3.5. And then finally in the Monday night game, when the 3-6 New York Giants travel to Tampa Bay to take on the 6-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 11.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here to win straight up, but the New York Giants plus 11.5. Alright, so time for my thoughts on each game. The New England Patriots over the Atlanta Falcons. I am taking the New England Patriots here to win this game based on what I have seen out of the Patriots over the last several weeks. They have outscored their opponents on this 4-game win streak 150-50. They have 2 wins of over 35 plus points. Mac Jones has been playing sensational. I think only having 3 total turnovers in their last 4 games. Or it could be a couple more, but he's been playing great. They ran the ball sensationally. Ramalde Stevens was fantastic. Trent Brown, who came back off the IR, was sensational in his return at the left tackle spot. That really helped fortify the offensive line. Hunter Henry with another 2 touchdown receptions. I will say this, Hunter Henry is doing pretty well for his contract. He's not really lighting up the stats every week, which is just pure raw number in terms of yards and catches, but he has definitely become Mac Jones' favorite red zone target. And I have just been incredibly impressed all the way around with how the Pats have evolved, how consistent they've been, and that I would say this, they can beat everybody and anybody in the AFC. Seriously. I think right now I'd have them as the 4th best team in the conference behind the Titans, the Bills, and the Ravens. I'd probably put the Pats 4 and the Chiefs 5. But again, I just feel like with the Pats, they've been just consistent, dominating. And here's another great thing that's going to help the Patriots. They are 2-4 at home, but they are 4-0 on the road. And they get to go on the road to play an Atlanta team that after all the confidence that you saw over the last several weeks, with Young Hoku kicking 3 game-winning field goals in a 6-week span, the Falcons, when you had the moment, when you had them +9, you didn't expect them to beat the Cowboys, just lay an absolute egg all the way around. Dak was sensational. We threw for another almost 300 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. Zeke ran for another touchdown. Cooper rushed, even got a touchdown later in the game. And it was really sad to see how poorly the Falcons played. I think the Falcons are still in the playoff race because I just think once you get past the top 5 teams in the NFC, you get to New Orleans and Carolina right now, and everybody else up to the Lions. You know, I even give the Bears and Lions and the Washington football team after beating Tampa their credit. That's just a big cluster rub of mediocrity. Like, nobody really outside of that, nobody really thinks any of those teams, or a lot of them aren't going to make it, but nobody thinks any of those teams are going to win the Super Bowl if they had to play one of those top 5 teams in front of them. And it's just one of those things with Atlanta that, like, New England has the history of Atlanta. There's going to be all these 28-3 jokes. Also, by the way, shout out to any Auburn I have extra sympathy for any Falcons fans that are Auburn fans that had to watch Mississippi State overcome their own 28-3 deficit to beat the Auburn Tigers on Saturday. So, double sympathy for those people there. But I am going to take the Patriots here. I just feel like, again, the Falcons, their offense against that secondary, they really don't have any big weapon besides Pitts. I think Duger and McCourty can easily cover him well. Cordell Patterson's not going to be able to really run the ball that well or make that many big receptions. And I just think Mac Jones, look, he's been consistent. And one of the things I really like what they said in the broadcast, apparently what he said to the broadcasters yesterday, was that he evolves every week. He said he was different as a freshman in high school to a senior in high school. He was different as a freshman in college compared to when he was a senior in college. And he was different in his first game in the NFL to now his 11th game in the NFL. And I just really like what the Patriots are doing. And they have a big game against the Titans coming up next week that could essentially tell everybody the Patriots are a legitimate Super Bowl contender to get there if they can beat the Titans, which I think with the Titans have, just kind of the scheduling and format, I think the Pats have a genuine chance to beat the Titans. Let's see how the Titans do, and who they can get back, but it's definitely looking really good at one Patriot place and doing their jobs at getting them in a very good spot. And the Bills, watch out. I'll just say that. So that's why I like the New England Patriots here, -5.5, and New England Patriots straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the Indianapolis Colts. This one is tough because I felt like when I watched them play against the Jets, they did a sensational job. Josh Allen had a couple touchdowns. They had a couple rushing touchdowns. Matt Breida got a 15-yard score. But the Bills all around, their defense was sensational again. They got 4 turnovers off Mike White. And I was somebody that actually really thought that Mike White could have made Zach Wilson a competition. I sincerely apologize. I was dead wrong about that. And the Buffalo Bills just, you look at their season and go, okay, you lost a 3-point game to Jacksonville. You literally were one Josh Allen trip away from beating the Titans, the best team in the conference. And you lost a 10-point game of a block punt touchdown, which changed the game. So right now, I think the Buffalo Bills are clearly the second best team in the conference. However, the problem is those 2 games, I just can't get out of my head the Jets game and the Steelers game. Because they should have, the Jags, not Jets. The Jags game and the Steelers game, I cannot get out of my head. I genuinely, it's like, that's the hard thing of, like, taking them. Because the Colts, for as up and down their season has been, they played pretty consistent football. And I thought after the E.J. Speed blocked punt 12-yard touchdown, I actually thought the Colts were going to rout the Bills in a way. But the Jags defense, to their credit, and James Robinson and Trevor Lawrence, they held on and were able to get it within a 6-point game after Michael Badgley made a 29-yard field goal. But at the end of the day, Trevor Lawrence fumbled the football, and the Colts won. And it's a playoff rematch from last year in the wild card round, which they won off of a 3-point game after Frank Reich decided to go for it on 4th down instead of taking a field goal. So I do believe the Bills they have more talent around them. Darius Leonard has been hobbled with an ankle injury and a foot injury apparently throughout. I think that the Bills defense, they can take out most of the Colts passing attack. It's just going to be key. Can the Bills defensive line generate pressure on the Colts? Because that's the one advantage the Colts have over the Bills, is that they can run the ball and pound the ball at a much more consistent rate compared to the Bills, whose primary leading rusher is Josh Allen, which is a huge problem. And because he's not Lamar Jackson, and Josh is just, even though he's a better athlete than people give him, but it's just one of those things that's why I have the Colts in this 7-point range. That, like, Carson Wentz has played really good, consistent football. Only has had, I believe, 1 interception or 1 or 2 interceptions throughout the whole year. And I think this game is going to be just nip and tuck, close game. I just feel like the Bills defense can get one more stop off a limited Colts offense on the receiving edge compared to the Colts, who I think their strength is their front end and their front 7 on both sides of the ball. And I just think that Josh Allen with his arm can be able to manipulate and take advantage of the weaker end of the Colts secondary, especially with Julian Blackmon out for the year. Xavier Rhodes, had a nice little resurgence in Indy for the last couple of years, but I feel like with Stephon Diggs, he'll do a fairly good job on him. Kenny Moore and all those other Colts secondary guys, I'm just not as sold on in this game against Buffalo. Should be a great game, real competitive, real interesting, but I'm going to take the Bills. They're at home, more complete offense, and I just trust that the Bills make a few more plays than the Colts, especially through the air. Josh Allen makes one more throw than Carson Wentz does. So that's why I like the Buffalo Bills here to win straight up, and Indianapolis Colts +7. The next game, the Baltimore Ravens over the Chicago Bears. This is one to where I'm taking the Ravens because after what the Dolphins did to the Ravens last Thursday, that was a huge wake-up call to see how many flaws and how many holes this Ravens team has. Because the key thing that happened throughout that game was the Miami Dolphins defense with Brian Flores, and I think Brian calls plays on defense. That was especially in New England. They sent the most defensive back blitzes in the entire league. They sent 24 of them. And the problem with our offense was that when you have an RPO and a running-based offense, and Lamar can't have time, or their receivers can't break tackles, you have one guy every time if you can get the pass off. And if you break away, and you saw it later in the game with Rashad Bateman, you can get another 10 to 15 yards because there was nobody in the middle of the field. The whole house was coming at Lamar Jackson, but they never could get it done. They couldn't run the ball. Lamar had a horrible night throwing the football. The offensive line got whipped by the Dolphins' defensive line. The turning point of the game was the Sammy Watkins fumble that turned into a touchdown by X. Big, huge play for him. Probably the first big play he's made the whole season. And Tua really made a couple nice, big, busted coverage throws one to Albert Wilson and the other one to Isaiah Ford in the game, or Jacoby made the one to Isaiah Ford, I'm sorry. Jacoby started Isaiah Ford, and two was thrown to Albert Wilson. Really, really difference in the game in terms of how they were able to get in the scoring position. Because the Ravens really could not make a lot of big explosive plays, or they got down the field by penalty, which is always a huge problem. So, I think the Ravens, look, they were coming off a 4-day week. They're going to have a 10-day week now. We haven't lost back-to-back games all year. And I feel like after what happened against Cincinnati where we looked bad, we played against the Vikings. It wasn't great, but we were able to get the win. And I just feel like with the Bears, they're probably not going to have Khalil Mack. Eddie Jackson's dealing with an injury himself. The offensive line is not that great in Chicago. Justin Fields has been one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league, and he hasn't even started every game this year. I do think Justin Fields can make a lot of plays, and I think that's going to be the key. Because from what I've seen out of the last couple of weeks, really I was shocked with the Niners game that, that game was a bit closer than you think, but the Niners were able to run over, 100-plus yards, and Jimmy Garoppolo had 2 rushing touchdowns. So I really believe that for the Chicago Bears, they can kind of stay within this game. They can be competitive. But I just feel like with the Ravens, that the Bears pass rush, Akeem Hicks had an injury as well. They're not as nearly as talented or have all their weapons defensively as they would have in the past. And I just think Lamar and them will bounce back in kind of a weird, motivating game, because the Ravens got a huge break by everybody, either the Bengals and the Steelers and Browns, not winning, and we're still in first place in the AFC North. So if we can beat the Bears, we will still have that 7-3 advantage, and then we prepare for our tough stretch of 2 Browns games, 2 Steelers game, a Bengals game, and Packers Rams. That's our final 7 games, and that is going to be a brutal run to go through for the rest of the year. I just think, again, the Ravens are going to be, a little more motivated, a lot more rested, and the Bears are not 100%. And I just think the Ravens defense can get after Justin Fields with confusion, and I think we'll get a good amount of pressure on him, and we win the game off our defense, our running game, and Lamar making plays and being more able to beat all-out blitzes or pressures to win the game in a very intriguing game against two very dynamic quarterbacks that are supposed to be the faces of their respective teams. So that's why I like the Baltimore Ravens here to win straight up, the Chicago Bears +6. The next game, the Cleveland Browns over the Detroit Lions. This is one to where, look, the Cleveland Browns played their worst game of the season. That was probably my worst pick straight up of the whole week. I knew the Patriots should have been in the conversation, and I probably, if I'd remembered that the Browns hadn't gone to New England since 1992 and won, it was Belichick. It was just a lot of really factors that I was like, I went with the quarterback, and obviously when Baker only throws for about 73 yards, only has 7 completions, he wasn't the better quarterback. Mac Jones just outplayed him by a mile. It wasn't, phenomenal statistically, but he did throw for about 196 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, and the route was on after the pick from Baker to Kyle Duggar. So I look at the Cleveland Browns here, and look, they didn't have Takk McKinley. They didn't have Greedy Williams. They didn't have Nick Chubb. They didn't have Kareem Hunt. They didn't have, obviously Odell wasn't there, but a lot of those guys weren't there. That wasn't going to be the difference in this game against New England, but I do think those guys coming back, or especially Nick Chubb and the other running back, because Dearness Johnson did okay. He had about 100-plus scrimmage yards, but those guys coming back will be a huge plus for the Browns, because Najee Harris was able to run for 130 yards yesterday, and I definitely think with Nick Chubb and that offensive line didn't get fully healthy, they should be able to do the same thing against a Lions defense, which is not very good. And I just look at the Lions, and everybody probably said, look, congratulations, the Lions are going to go 0-17. Yes, they could be the first team to have 2 consecutive 0-16 seasons, except the 0-16 in one season is going to be better by only half a point. Jared Goff did not play that well. The Lions, if Big Ben was in that game, they would have won that game at least by 7. And I'll tell you that now. And I do want to say, for everybody out there that wants to get on Big Ben Roethlisberger, and look, I know Ben's in decline, but let's stop, this man is not Sam Darnold. Okay, this man is not P.J. Walker. Okay, Big Ben is still to me, a top 15, top 20 quarterback that can win you a lot of games. You gave me Ben Roethlisberger or Kirk Cousins right now, I'll take big Ben Roethlisberger. If you gave me Ben Roethlisberger or Derek Carr, I'll take Ben Roethlisberger. And I would hope that everybody out there, that after what they watched Mason Rudolph put them through yesterday, that they have some more respect for Big Ben. And that, Big Ben may not be the old Big Ben. Big Ben may not be the phenomenal, gunslinging, Favre-ish type player. But he can definitely win you a lot of games and play better at a way to get you a win over a Lion team that, should not have been able to tie, even with Mason Rudolph out there. But I digress. But also, I just feel like every time the Lions get you these, against the spread victories, the very next week they lay an egg. So we're like, oh yeah, they could have a chance. And then you just watch and go, no. I remember, they played the Bengals. Everybody's like, oh, hey, the Lions could compete. Then they get blown out. Then what happened with the Rams? Oh, yeah, they played the Eagles, and then they get blown out. And it's just I just kind of feel like with the Browns, they're ticked off. They're at home. They're motivated. And usually when you get really embarrassed if you're a decent enough team playing a bad team, they should be able to bounce back and play at a very good level. I think the Lions, they could have a shot. If Baker's dealing with knee injuries, foot injuries, arm injuries. If the Lions defense can kind of get through the Browns offensive line, they have a shot. But I think the Browns are going to be motivated, and I just think the Browns getting Nick Chubb, getting their other running back, getting their defense playing well. I think playing against the Mac Jones offense, playing against the Lions offense are two totally different things. And if it comes down to a kicking battle, Ryan Santos, the Lions kicker who botched that horrible 48-yard field goal attempt, will be outplayed by Shane McLaughlin, or who I believe is the Browns kicker now. So that's why I like the Cleveland Browns here, -10, and the Cleveland Browns straight up. The next game, the Tennessee Titans over the Houston Texans. This is one to where the Tennessee Titans are the best team in the AFC. It's amazing to say that, but it's true. And I feel like the thing about the Titans that's impressive is they are just able to find ways to get gritty wins. They're not pretty. Ryan Tannehill had an up-and-down game. They didn't have Derrick Henry. They didn't have Julio Jones is on the IR. He's going to miss at least the next 2 games. And it's weird. Bud Dupree left with an abdominal strain, but they were able to win without him there. They have, no Caleb Farley. They have guys like Matthias Farley and Cameron Borders in their secondary. Kevin Byard's having, a nice few weeks, and he's playing up. He's starting to play up a bit to, what they paid him. And I just think with the Titans, it's one of those things to where, again, their schedule has not been great. And if they had Jameis Winston, you could argue the Saints could have beat the Titans. And I'll give you that. But the Titans are just, finding ways to win games. And if they can get Derrick Henry by the end of the season, they should be able to, be a scary team that can legitimately get to the Super Bowl for the first time since 1999. And I just look at this Titans-Texans game. And the Texans, look, Tyrod Taylor, it was his first game back after a hamstring injury. And he wasn't great. He threw 3 picks, very un-Tyrod-like. That was the one thing that everybody liked about Tyrod, including me, was that the fact that he did not turn it over. But I am going to take the Tennessee Titans here, just because of everything that the Titans, are going through injury-wise. I don't think they're going to need them against this Texans team, which, can look better. And maybe Tyrod, play more of a game like he did week 1 when they beat Jacksonville. Maybe. But just from what I've seen out of the Titans, they have enough offensively with Ferkser, Akini Westbrook, A.J. Brown, Michael Pruitt, who's only had 11 receptions, or has only had 11 targets this year. 3 of those were for touchdowns, so good for Michael Pruitt. And I just think the Titans are just clearly the better all-around team. And Titans are still sticking pretty, in the 1 seed, but the Texans are fighting to get the number 1 pick. I think next week, like I said, depending on how the Titans do, if they're in a competitive game against Houston, I'll probably take the Patriots to win. Just for everything that they're having to deal with. If they blow out the Texans, I might have taken the Titans to win in New England, even with the Pats being as hot and consistent as they've been right now. It's not gonna be that great of a game. I think again, if anybody in survival is still alive, good for you. Take the Titans this week if you can to beat the Texans. That's just the easy, relaxing, comfortable pick in my opinion. So that's like the Tennessee Titans here, -10, and Tennessee Titans straight up. The next game, the Green Bay Packers over the Minnesota Vikings. This is one to where the Vikings, out of all the teams that are not in the playoffs in the NFC, in my opinion, they're the best team that's not in there. Seriously. Kirk Cousins has quietly had a impressive year. Actually, let me pull this up real quickly. this is Kirk Cousins' stat line. Let me see here. For this year. Let me pull it up on Pro Football Reference. Here we go. He has completed 68.1% of his passes for 2,434 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. That's MVP-type numbers from Kirk Cousins. But nobody's going to put Kirk Cousins in that conversation because the team's under 500. The team, like, they are the most impressive team because the Vikings have not been in a game, I believe, all year that has been decided by 7 or fewer points. Not all year. All year they've been in field goal games. And to me, like, that's a testament to how good the team is. And you can argue how bad the team is because, you know, they end up losing at the gun. They can't close games. And when you look at the Vikings, you know, Jefferson had a great game, 9 receptions over 140 yards. Dalvin Cook got a big touchdown. Tyler Conklin had 2 touchdowns. The 1 4th down touchdown and the 5-yard touchdown in the second quarter. And I just, again, like, the Vikings are a pretty consistent, solid team. The problem is that they're playing the Packers. And it's just one of those things that Rodgers has typically owned the Vikings on a consistent rate, game after game, year after year. You know, last week, or yesterday, he had one of his, you know, worst games in a while. He had 1 interception. He didn't throw a touchdown either. A.J. Dillon had 2 big rushing touchdowns. Also, a quick story. Wishes to Aaron Jones. He's going to be out for at least the next 1 to 2 weeks with a mild MCL sprain. They thought it was going to be much more serious than that. But I look at this Packers-Vikings game and I go, the Vikings are going to put up a fight. And I was really hoping that the Vikings line was going to be like 7 or 6. They were like, okay, that's way too high. The Vikings can compete. And look, Mike Zimmer has always kind of given Rodgers some fits of his defense. But at the end of the day, with Rodgers getting another, you know, week under his belt, he's done all of his COVID protocols and all that stuff. So, you know, he should be getting healthier and playing a much weaker defense than what the Vikings portrayed. And Eric Kendricks, though, by the way, with the interception of the week with that diving grab on Justin Herbert in the game. But I'm going to take the Packers here. You have the better quarterback, the better consistent defense, which has played pretty well. Though they might have lost Whitney Merciless and Rashawn Gary to 2 significant injuries for an extended amount of time. That's unfortunate. But in that way, I don't think those losses are going to be that big for the Vikings to be able to capitalize on with what they have. And also, shout out to Dakota Dozier. Hopefully, you know, he was the offensive lineman that got into the hospital with COVID-19, even though he was fully vaccinated. He was able to come out. He felt better, but shout out to him. Glad to know you're feeling better, man. Can't wait to see you back on the field. I'm going to take the Packers here. Better defense, better weapons, and just a better quarterback in history. Like, in this game, like Rodgers and Cousins, I think Cousins has beaten Rodgers 1 time. I think he's beaten him 1 time. In all their trials, you know, in all their games. I think he's won either 1 or 2 times. Most of the other time, Rodgers usually wins this game, and it's not even close, really. I'm going to give the Vikings their, you know, due, and I could say that, you know, the Vikings will compete with the Packers more than what, you know, people think. But at the end of the day, who's going to win? I think it's going to be at least by a field goal. It's Rodgers. It's a more, you know, consistent team. The Packers defense playing much better than the Vikings have. And I just feel like, again, if you're going to get into a shootout or get into a competitive game, I'll take Aaron Rodgers over Kirk Cousins every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So that's why I like the Green Bay Packers here, -2.5, and the Green Bay Packers straight up. The next game, the Miami Dolphins over the New York Jets. This is one to where the Jets have lost 9 straight divisional games. The last time the last time the Jets played the Dolphins, they lost by a field goal, I believe, at the end. And then the time before, they got shut out 24-0 with Joe Flacco starting there. And ironically, he's back in New York this time around. But I just feel like with the Dolphins, look, Devontae Parker's going to be out this week. Will Fuller's been MIA the whole year. But at the end of the day, like, I can trust the Dolphins' structure of the offensive line. And also, Robert Hunt. By the way, he had the funniest play of the week when he caught the screen pass from Jacoby that ended up, you know, getting into his hands. He ran it into the end zone, but that is illegal. You cannot do that. But I'm so sorry to him, but I do want to commend the Dolphins for putting it on their elevator rap. for the week. So, and Rachel Bonetta, the NFL Network reporter, does have shirts with that same picture on, so good for them. But I'm going to take the Dolphins here because I've watched the Jets. They have given up 45 points in at least 3 of the last 4 games. They have been just downright pathetic. Mike White threw 4 interceptions, had a quarterback rating of 39, and the Dolphins are just clearly better. Like, the Dolphins, you know, they've been able to run the ball. They've been in more competitive games. They've won back-to-back games for the first time all year. I still think Brian Flores is going to get fired, but, you know, getting 3 straight wins to help boost your team, you know, can give the Dolphins fans a little confidence and maybe could sway the management by the end. But I just think the Dolphins, just from what you've seen over the last several weeks, the Dolphins have clearly been the better football team. I don't care if Jacoby. I think Tua will start, though, because I think it was pretty ridiculous to have Tua not start the game due to the fracture in his finger. Jacoby gets nicked up for a little bit, leaves the game, and then right when he comes back in, Flores pulls him out for Tua, and Tua ends up, you know, winning the game, playing okay enough to win. I think it's going to be, you know, an interesting game. The Jets, you know, look, they've already beaten the Titans. They've already beaten the Bengals. So they can pull off this kind of weird upset before. And it's a divisional game, so you can throw the records out the window. But I'm going to take the Dolphins. I feel like, you know, again, they've been more consistent. They should get maybe Will Fuller back. They have some more, you know, dynamic weapons. I trust Tua over Mike or Zach, whoever starts. And the Dolphins defense will just have a great time going up against the Jets offense and the Jets defense, which isn't really great at a lot of things. So that's why I like the Miami Dolphins here, -3, and the Miami Dolphins straight up. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the New Orleans Saints. This is a game to where I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles based off of the quarterback and defensive play. Yesterday was probably the Eagles' most impressive all-around win against the Denver Broncos. The game was pretty much nip and tuck. It was a 2013 game until, I believe, Melvin Gordon went for it on 4th and 1. And he got the ball stripped, and Darius Slay returned it for 83 yards, and that was the end of the game. They were up by 14 at that point. Then you had the field goal moment to where, I think at the end, you know, or basically, yeah, that was a 14-point game. They got the field goal at the end to make it 30-13, and that was probably the most impressive win the Eagles have had all season. Actually, they also put up a stat. Through the last 4 games, where I think the Eagles have won 3 of their last 4, they have ran for over 720 yards. In the first 6 games, they only had ran for about 630 yards. So that is a testament to Nick Sirianni, the offensive line, and a commitment to the running game, which has helped really change the Eagles' season around and give them a good amount of quality wins. Do I think the Eagles are going to win the NFC East? Absolutely not. I think the Cowboys are clearly the best team in the division. However, if you look at the Eagles' schedule, after this game, they have the easiest remaining schedule left. They have 4 divisional games, and the Jets, along with their bye. So, at that point, at 5-6, with those 6 games, the Jets, 5 divisional games, the Eagles have a very reasonable chance of how bad the NFC 6-13 picture is to make the playoffs. So I'm not going to count the Eagles out of the playoffs. I think the Eagles, with their remaining schedule, who knows? I think, you know, they have a good shot. And with the Saints, it's very much like the opposite to where you just look at Simeon. He didn't play horribly, but there were just some bad moments, like late in the game when he took the 3rd down sack. I was stunned that Peyton went for the field goal in that spot to make it an 8-point game. But then Randy Bullock makes a 36-yard field goal at the end to make it an 11-point game. And I can't trust Simeon right now. It was kind of mind-boggling that Simeon, through the second half of the Bucs game, was able to hold on to beat Tampa. But then if you think about it, Taylor Heineke did the same thing. So I feel like with New Orleans that they're in a very tough spot in how, you know, they're going to move forward. I don't think the Saints are going to go winless the rest of the way through. I just feel like the more you see their games, the more, and the opponents they're playing, the less you have confidence in Simeon and Hill. I think Taysom Hill should start for this game. I just think Trevor Simeon's just not that guy. Taysom Hill is a guy that they used before. They were 4-1 without him last year, or with him last year when Drew Brees went down. And I just think he provides more of a spark for the team. And the Saints just seem very predictable in that last sequence before they got the touchdown. It was just a very predictable sequence, which was kind of frustrating. but I will take the Eagles here because I trust the offensive and defensive lines, and I think Jalen makes a few more plays than the Saints do. And however, this is a rematch from last year, Week 14 last year, in the upset of the year when Jalen Hurts first started. It's coming back full circle, essentially. Jalen was able to win that game with a massive running game performance. I think it's going to be a very similar performance this time around in Philadelphia once again. So that's why I like Philadelphia here, -1.5 in Philadelphia straight up. The next game, the Carolina Panthers over the Washington football team. Look, I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers here to win this football game based off the fact of Cam Newton is likely going to be the starter this coming week. He's going to take all the first team reps, and the expectation is probably that he's going to start. And I just look at Washington and say this. I think Washington put up that was their Super Bowl performance. They got revenge on the playoff game last year in the wild card round. Tom Brady threw two first half interceptions, first time since 2012 that happened. Taylor Heineke had a sensational day, and I've gone on Taylor Heineke throughout the season. I've made a lot of cracks at him, but yesterday was his finest hour, so congratulations to him. No joke to him, and with Ryan Fitzpatrick, from what I've heard, being out for the rest of the year, this is an opportunity for Taylor Heineke to at least keep his job and at least make the Washington football team consider saying, okay, Taylor Heineke has earned the right to compete for a starting job. I don't think he's earned it outright just through his inconsistent play. But he will at least earn the right to compete for whatever quarterback they take in the draft to compete for the job. And it's just something to where the Carolina Panthers just played really well yesterday. I know it was Colt McCoy, but they got 2 turnovers on him quickly. They unraveled. Christian McCaffrey had a great game. First time since about week 2 or 3 that he's been able to have a really good game and stay healthy. And I just like the Panthers' defensive line. I like the Panthers all. And it's the idea of saying there is not a quarterback that knows Ron Rivera's scheme and talent better than Cam Newton. And also, when you look at the Washington football team, they have 2 big losses. Montez Sweat on Friday was put on the injured reserve list for a fractured jaw. And unfortunately, from what people are saying, defensive end Chase Young could be out for the year of a torn ACL. That's unfortunate. I think the whole Washington defense has been quite a disappointment. It was only the second time all season that the Washington football defense held an opponent under 20 points. It was them and the Broncos. The week before that were able to do that. And I just look at the Carolina Panthers saying they have a little bit better team. They have a much better defense compared to Tampa, a healthier defense, especially on the back end. And I think Cam, with his knowledge of Rivera's defense and just the inability of Taylor Heineke, I have confidence in the Panthers to win this game. In a very intriguing game where I think Heineke will play okay, but Cam will outplay him, and the Panthers defense gets 1 or 2 turnovers that that they will capitalize on, unlike the Buccaneers did last week. So that's why I like Carolina here, -3, and Carolina straight up. The next game, the San Francisco 49ers over the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is one to where I'm going with the better staff. Losing to, the Cardinals with all their backups, that's really bad. And Jacksonville will not be as bad as losing to the backups. But the 49ers are the better team, even with all their injuries, right? Like, Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence hasn't thrown a touchdown in the last 2 weeks. He's thrown for 130 and 150 yards. That's not great at all. And it's just they were able to run the ball. And the Jags, I will say this, I will give Urban Meyer this. He's at least made the team improve by the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Like, when they got blown out by the Texans, you're like, oh, man, that's horrible. But at least now the Jags can at least compete. James Robinson got another rushing touchdown. They were able to have a chance at the end to beat the Colts. They beat the Bills. And I just, they had a 14-point lead on the Bengals. Like, the Jags have had moments where they've been able to compete. And I think with the Niners' injuries to their secondary, to their wide receivers, to the offensive line, I think the Jags can hold on and make this game somewhat competitive. But at the end of the day, it's the 49ers and the Jags. And I'm like, Jimmy, you got to win this one, right? You already beat Fields. You can beat Trevor Lawrence, right? And the Niners defensive line, you can get pressure on Trevor, right? I know Trevor's a better athlete than Jimmy is, but I just feel like the Niners, with what they have offensively, with Debo, with Kittle, with Ayuk, with possibly Josh Norman, Jimmy Ward, you have a talented enough team defensively and offensively that you should be able to beat the Jags in a close game. You know, I think it comes down to field goal. You're going to get Robbie Gould back. And I just have a lot of confidence in the 49ers to win this game just based off what they have talent-wise and scheme-wise. If Kyle Shanahan loses to Urban Meyer, I will say this. I don't think the 49ers will win another game the rest of the year. They might not, if they can't beat Jacksonville, okay, I believe they play the Texans. So they could beat the Texans. But besides that, I don't think the Niners will win another game the rest of the year if they can't beat the Jags. If they can't beat the Jags with what they have and just the talent they have, Kyle Shanahan will get fired. John Lynch maybe should be considered getting fired. But I definitely know it should be the end of Kyle Shanahan's time in San Francisco if he loses to Jacksonville next Sunday. In kind of an intriguingly bad, entertaining game. So that's why I like the San Francisco 49ers here straight up, but I'll take the Jacksonville Jaguars plus 5.5. The next game, the Cincinnati Bengals over the Las Vegas Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders were horrible last night. They had two horrendous turnovers. Derek Carr threw up a punt to one of the worst safeties in the league, Daniel Sorensen. And the Chiefs, after not being able to score a lot the last couple weeks, they scored 20 and 13 the 2 previous weeks. They put a 41 by Patrick Mahomes, 36 and 50 performance, 405 yards, 5 touchdowns with no interceptions. And it's one of those things to where, look, the Bengals, they got embarrassed last week. Basically, in the last 2 games that they played, or 2 of the last 3 games they played, they got embarrassed by losing to the Jets, and they got blown out by the Browns. And the game 2 games before that, they blew out the Ravens. I think the Bengals are motivated. They've had a whole week to rest. And the Raiders, I just feel like, look, they lost also another significant injury, but best wishes to Alex Ingold, the Las Vegas Raiders fullback. He is out for the year of a torn ACL. So that's unfortunate. But I look at the Raiders and Bengals, and I just feel like the Raiders are at a really tough spot because after winning their first 2 games against the Broncos and the Eagles, everybody thought, okay, Versace has got this team going. Maybe, John Gruden was the problem. And he, was more a problem than solution. Then you look at the last 2 games, you're like, you lost to the Giants where you committed 3 turnovers. You got blown up by your division rival. And were only held to 14 points. So, with that being said, all the factors are giving me the Bengals right here. The Bengals, I think, again, have been more consistent. They're a little bit better team. And I just trust the talent and staff around there coming off a bye compared to the Raiders at this point. The Raiders, I feel like I've kind of done it again for 3 straight years. They had this really nice hot start. They obviously went through the Gruden patch, and then you had Damon Arnett and Henry Ruggs stuff, right? And they were 5-2, they were 5-2, and now they're on a path to where after the game against the Bengals, they play the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. So you can see the Raiders just slipping further into mediocrity, to where they might make the playoffs, but it might not matter. But in this game, I'm going to take the Bengals rested, motivated to play, and I just think they have a better overall staff compared to what the Raiders have right now. And the Alex Ingold loss will be significant because I feel like, they'll have Jalen Richard as their backup, but he's nowhere near as good as a fullback, and I think they use Ingold really well. And obviously, they don't have to worry about speed because even though Deshaun Jackson did have the one big reception, he did get the ball punched down, and Tyron Nash picked it up for a fumble recovery. But in this game, I'm going to take the Bengals. More rested, better staff, and I just trust the Bengals' resume from what I've seen compared to the Raiders at this point. So that's like the Cincinnati Bengals on a pick 'em against the spread and straight up. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the Kansas City Chiefs. This is one to where I am taking the Cowboys here because I just believe Dak's weapons. Dak will outshoot Patrick Mahomes. In this type of game, with the offenses and the consistency that there's been, the argument is fairly simple. It's going to be a shootout game. This is, for Dallas and Kansas City, right in the heart of Big 12 country. This will be a classic Big 12 type of offensive football game. The first one, I believe, the 45-50 will win this game, just because based on how great the offenses are and how limited or injured both defenses are at this point. Could the Chiefs win this game? Sure. Look, the Chiefs have allowed only 20 points through the last 20 points through the last 5 weeks and second halves. That's like the best in a 20-year span behind the 2005 Bears defense of Brian Urlacher. That was an actual stat I found from First Things First, and Nick Wright, who's a Chiefs homer, obviously bragging about it. So, but at the end of the day, though, they played the Daniel Jones-led Giants offense, which is hit or miss at times. They played Jordan Love, the backup quarterback for the Packers, and they played the Raiders, who put up a typical Raiders, unfortunate performance. So I think the Cowboys, who were coming off an embarrassing loss themselves, righted themselves by beating the Falcons by, by, what was it, 43-7, 46-3, by over 40 points. And I don't think the Cowboys are going to be as dominant against the Chiefs. But I feel like the Chiefs' defense is not as good as what they've been over the last few weeks. It's been nice to put up, and it does count. But in this type of game with this shootout, I'm going to take the Cowboys because they have more talented weapons compared to the Chiefs, who really only have 2 weapons. If they can double Kelsey and they can double Tyreek, let Patrick Mahomes try to throw it to everybody else. Even though DeMarcus Robinson got a big catch, Mecole Hardman had a couple nice catches, Josh Gordon has been an absolute zero since he's been there because he hasn't been able to do anything. And I'm just going to trust that the Cowboys win this game and they get the ball last in this type of game. Whoever has 1 turnover will lose the game. I feel like with both these offenses, they're both going to go up and down the field. But I'll take the Cowboys here. I trust Dak's talent offensively more than Mahomes. There's more depth and more consistency at the running, receiving positions, even though the Chiefs are expected to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire back this week. So that's why Dallas here +2 and Dallas straight up. Then the next game, the Seattle Seahawks over the Arizona Cardinals. This one is to where I do not believe Kyler Murray is going to play. They said this could be a 1 to 3 week injury. I would, if I was Cliff Kingsbury personally, they're going to be at worst if they lose 8-3. They could be the top wild card team. There's nobody coming within 3 games of the rest of that spot. They get the bye week after, so I'd rest Kyler and DeAndre for at least the next 2 weeks. Give them 2 weeks before their next big game, and then just get back on track. You still have a game against the Rams to determine the division. And if the Cardinals beat the Rams again, they'll have the head-to-head tiebreaker, so that'd be a massive edge there. And I just feel like with the Cardinals, I just don't know if, Colt McCoy can play. And I think Russell Wilson, who had one of his worst games as a pro, 0 TDs, 2 interceptions. By the way, he has never won at Lambeau Field, and every game in his 9 games against the Packers, he has thrown 11 TDs to 12 interceptions. I think that's the only team in the league. He has more interceptions than touchdowns. It's Green Bay, for some odd reason. I think the Seahawks were frustrated. They were embarrassed. I felt bad for their defense because that was basically a 3-0 game through 3 quarters until, the Packers are finally able to get a few nice scoring drives, and A.J. Dillon had his 2 rushing touchdowns. But I think that for me, the Seahawks at home, and I know they haven't been great at home. They've only won 1 game at home against the Jags. I think they get this one just because I feel like the Cardinals are not going to be fully healthy. If Kyler plays, I'll still take the Seahawks, but I know it's going to be probably not looking very good. I just think at the end of the day, Russ will outplay Kyler. He outplayed him last year in this game. The Seahawks defense played better, and I just think without DeAndre, the Seahawks defense should be able to, hold up defensively enough for Russ to be able to make some bigger plays and more consistent plays against a Cardinals defense, which last week kind of got worked pretty well. And if it's Colt McCoy or Chris Streveler, I'm just going to have a lot of confidence that Russ outplays him in that game. So that's all I like the Seattle Seahawks here, -2, and the Seattle Seahawks straight up. And then finally, the last 2 games, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is all due to Ben Roethlisberger having COVID-19. He is vaccinated, so all he needs is 2 tests for 24 hours apart to be cleared. But usually this list lasts about 10 days if you do not have symptoms or if you still have the virus. So he had it Saturday, so he's likely out for this Sunday's game, 2 games, and it's Mason Rudolph against Justin Herbert. So that's all you need to know. Mason Herbert couldn't even beat the Lions with all the talent the Steelers had. You could argue, so I am going to take the Steelers to +3.5 because honestly, with the Chargers, they're very much like the Vikings, the AFC version of the Vikings. They're basically in every game, and if Staley's not going for it on 4th down or he's not being able to be as successful, this game could be really close. And it's weird with Herbert that against the Steelers defense, which is pretty talented, T.J. Watt likely being out too week to week with hip and knee injuries. Also swayed my pick to the Chargers as well. I think the Steelers pass rush is nowhere near as good, and they're really missing Melvin Ingram right now because they really could have used him in this break where T.J. got hurt again. I I think this game, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a bunch of Steelers fans there, and everybody knows the Charger games, and everybody that goes to Los Angeles, they are never really have a home crowd advantage because the opposing team usually overpowers, and the Steelers have one of the top fan bases in the country. And you already saw it with the Cowboys and Raiders, so definitely the Steelers are going to have basically a home type advantage when they go out there this Sunday night. But I just feel like, again, it's Herbert and Rudolph. If that, to me, that'd be really sad for the Chargers. Where, everything I said positive about them kind of goes away if they can't beat the Steelers with Mason Rudolph again. I would start Haskins maybe just because, you saw what Mason could do and it's not great. But I'm going to take the Chargers. Better team. More consistent defensively. The Steelers, lost one of their offensive tackles. TJ Watt will be down. They have some... Joe Hayden is day-to-day of a foot injury. And I don't have a lot of confidence with Rudolph with a limited... Chase Claypool's dealing with an ankle injury. That they can go into Los Angeles, even with the crowd behind them in Los Angeles, and win that game. So that's why I like the Los Angeles Chargers here to win straight up with the Pittsburgh Steelers plus 3.5. And finally, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the New York Giants. This is a Monday night game. I do not know how the New York Giants got 2 Monday night football games in 3 weeks. In 4 weeks. That's stunning to me. And Tampa Bay, look, they were up and down, but they should be able to win this Monday night game. It's the Giants. They were in this game last year. It was 27-25 Tampa. And the Giants have always just, again, seemed to be in close games most of the time. And it is Tampa coming off of weird, the secondary is not nearly as banged up. You don't know about AB and Gronk status. But at the end of the day, look, Daniel Jones, his first career win was against the Bucs in Tampa against Jameis Winston. I don't think Tom Brady wants that kind of revenge. And also I think Tom Brady's motivated to get back on the winning side. Especially with a more competitive game against the Colts coming up next weekend in Indy. I think the Bucs win this game. They're at home, and I just cannot trust the Giants, even with all their weapons back, that they could win this game. If the Giants win this game, the Bucs are still going to make the playoffs, but they're not going to get the Super Bowl. If you lose to the Giants and the Washington football team in back-to-back weeks, you're not a Super Bowl team. Because the Packers would have beat both of them back-to-back. The Cardinals fully healthy would have beat them back-to-back. The Cowboys, same thing. And if you lose to them, yeah, that's not good. So I think it's going to be a very good competitive game. I think the Giants, they always seem to like to hang around, apparently. But I'm going to take the better team, the more motivated team, the more talented team. And if they get AB or Gronk back, that'll be huge. And I think getting one of their corners back will be big as well. But best wishes to Richard Sherman. He had a calf injury in pregame warm-ups, and he will be out again for an extended amount of time. I think he should hang up his boots after this year. It's that bad and sad. So that's why I like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here to win straight up at the New York Giants plus 11.5. Alright, so those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page and my description. Check out other great YouTube prognosticators. And that is it. So until next week for American Thanksgiving week games, where you get the 3 Thanksgiving games and the rest Sunday games, that is it. So until next time, until the Monday before American Thanksgiving, this is Matthew Fanatic signing off. Until next time, so long.